Bom dia, boa tarde, boa noite, or whatever the case may be. My name is Marcus, and I am the host of the Black Brazil Today YouTube channel, as well as the blackbraziltoday.com blog, where I analyze Brazil from the perspective of race. So the article I'm going to cover today is actually from 2018. But as I often say when I'm introducing videos and new topics and new subjects, new material, regardless of what year it came out, I often post material on the blog that's it's going to apply to whatever new topic that I may be discussing today. So I know it's 2023, so this article is almost 5 years old, but it's still relevant. And the reason why I thought to discuss this particular article today, because it continues a conversation that I'm having about this idea that many Black Brazilians have been indoctrinated to prefer white or whiter partners in terms of romantic relationships, marriage, having children. This is something that's been going on for decades. You can talk to Black families in Brazil, and they will tell you, many of them will tell you, that they were basically told by their own parents, like, look, don't bring nobody Black home. We're trying to improve the race. We're trying to, melhorar a raça. We're trying to clean the race, limpa a raça. No dá duas pessoas negras. It's no use to have two Black people together in a relationship, right? So this is something that has been discussed openly for generations. If you talk to enough people, you'll hear the same story. Like, of course, both of my parents, if they dated a Black person, it's like the Black mother and father would frown upon the selection of a clearly Black person as a romantic partner for their son or daughter. Why can't you go and get a homo branco, get a white man, get a white girl? This, the same way that it's almost like the opposite. African Americans were taught, just bring home somebody Black. Increasingly, I'm seeing that change these days. And this is why I always ask, I'm like, okay, I've already seen how this promotion of interracial unions has bamboozled the Black Brazilian population. But I'm starting to see this train of thought start to enter the African American community, and it's like slipping in because of this ongoing gender war between Black American men and Black American women. And I just have to say, which way Black America? Because from everything I've discovered in Brazil, this long, decades-long, generations-long goal of social engineering the darker elements of the population to become lighter is something that's very clear. Some people still can't acknowledge it. They'll just believe that, love has no color. My wife is white or my husband is white because I just fell in love with him. And, my thing is, again, if you narrow down all of your romantic selections down to only one side, of course you can just fall in love because you've eliminated a whole half of the population that you don't feel like would be a good idea today, even if those people happen to look like you. So the reason why I want to discuss today's article is because it's a continuation of this trying to come to an understanding of why this seems to be such a deep mental brainwashing that you find people who are not even aware of it. And I can't say everybody is, I will generalize to say that everybody's under this type of manipulation, but it's very strong in Brazil and it's very clear. Any person who travels to Brazil and just looks around, depending on what state you're in, and say, wow, where are the Black couples here? So I wanted to continue this conversation because of a recent incident that just happened a few days ago. And when I saw the news, I was just like, oh, wow, man, that's kind of messed up. There's a couple, a Black man and a Black woman the woman in this relationship is she's, she's, I could say she's famous. She's not like a level black celebrity, but people know who she is because of a TV show that she used to dance on this particular TV show. And I'm not going to touch on that. Like I said, I wanted to introduce this topic first before I get into that news that just broke. First it was just a news piece that I read, and then a couple other people jumped on the story, and I says, okay, maybe this is a discussion that needs to be had. So before I introduce that story, and I'll probably get to it either tomorrow or the day after, I want to introduce it, give it some context with this article that I have from 2018, which is called "The Validation We Want Is Usually White: Why Black Romantic Relationships Tend to Be Complex." So this is a scene from, many of you have seen the 2002 global hit, Cidade de Deus, or translated as City of God. And this is just going into, in the past decade, so many Black Brazilians have waken up to the question of, why do so many of us seem to prefer white partners? For years, Black Brazilians would deny this preference. They would always play it off like, race, we all mix here, race is no problem, love has no color. But increasingly, particularly over the last decade or even a few years before that, more and more Black Brazilians are willing to be more critical about the question, to say, well, maybe there is something going on here. Why is it that so many of us, particularly in our quote unquote elite classes, seem to always marry white partners? Now, I'll say this again too, because I've already seen, because I've talked about this for so long. I used to say that whenever I get into a debate online, even if the debate is in English, I can always tell when a Brazilian is commenting on something in English, because it's always the same type of comments, the same type of reactions. You could just count on it. If you say something, they're automatically going to respond in a particular way. So even on my YouTube channel, somebody recently commented on one of my videos about interracial marriage and unions, and this proclivity of Black Brazilians to marry, whiter partners. And somebody wrote something to the degree of, we've been mixing here for decades, centuries, or whatever, and we're going to keep on mixing here. A lot of people seem to take issue when this topic is brought up. Now, when I first started talking about this 20 some years ago, when I became aware of it, and I started discussing this, I would always get reactions from white and Black Brazilians like, you racist Yankee North Americans, why don't you keep your racial segregation to the United States and leave us alone? And my response has always been, whatever topic there is under the sun, it can be discussed regardless of whether you like it or you don't. I've come to accept the fact that I can be correct about things, I can be wrong about things, and the only way to be able to challenge what I believe about something is to have this discussion with somebody who has an opposite opinion. So the reason that I'm saying that is, when I first started talking about this 2 decades ago, I would automatically be cast as the racist North American Yankee. You guys don't mix, so you're racist. But Brazilians themselves in the last decade, again, have been questioning the high rates of miscegenation and this ongoing whitening process that goes on in so many Black Brazilian families. You'll see in 3 to 4 generations, you'll see a very dark-skinned person. And within the 3rd or 4th generation, this constant mixing. And finally, you see a child that's born with very fair skin, white skin, blue eyes, and blonde hair. In the love side of the matter, it doesn't matter. You just produced another human life. But on the psychological, emotional, mental side of the question, how many Black Brazilians seem to have this in their mind, that this is a goal to whiten their offspring, finally getting to that accepted standard condition of whiteness? And, for the most part, you're not going to get people to admit that openly. Now, there's been a few people over the years who have openly acknowledged, yes, I prefer white, but most people won't do that. So then, in recent years, there's been calls for more what they call amor afrocentrado, which means basically Afrocentric love. There's more people in Brazil, Black people, who are promoting the idea like, look, why can't we start loving each other? Why can't Black men and Black women get together instead of automatically looking to get with somebody on the white side of the fence? You know, there's been apps that seek to promote Black Brazilian women and men getting together. And it's still, I'd still say it's a minority of people who participate in this, but it's still, you could say revolutionary, because Brazil has always been the question, it's always been a point of, we mix here. Nobody has questioned why, because it's always just immediately knee-jerk reaction. Well, it's love. People fell in love. Like, well, when you look at certain studies and you see that 5 out of 6 interracial couples in Brazil, in which one of the partners is Black, that Black partner 5 out of 6 times usually has a higher socioeconomic status than the white partner. Is that just supposed to be a coincidence? Anyway, let me get into this piece here, because I'll be talking about this all day, and I really want to get to the point so that I can introduce the next video where I have to cover this incident that a lot of people are talking about online in Black Brazilian media. So let me get into this, and the video that I'm going to do in a few days, either tomorrow or in a few days. It'll make a lot more sense. So, as with many personal texts I come across, translate and post on this blog, when I read today's piece, I thought the author deserved applause. He deserves applause, like many other Black Brazilians, because he's delving into a subject that few people are willing to tackle head on without cliche comments meant to deflect the topic away from any serious discussion. As a matter of fact, when I got to a certain point in today's piece, I wondered if the author had listened to a lecture by the late great African-American psychiatrist, Frances Cress Welsing. Like the theories that Welsing developed over the course of some 50 years in investigating the situation of Black people, some of the thoughts of today's author, Emerson Luis, may not be accepted in mainstream circles. You see, Luis is not willing to toe the typical line in Brazilian society that refuses to acknowledge that there are far more influential forces behind the rise of interracial unions over the past few decades. You know, more influential forces beyond the typical love has no color. I just happen to fall in love. Of course, I've been saying this all along, but people generally don't like or accept these views when it comes from someone they consider to be an outsider. Question: how can anyone really expect that a Black population that is under the complete domination of the white population in every way imaginable does not also desire to be like or an actual part of that group? Now, one thing I want to point out here is that for a number of years now, Black Brazilians have been taking material from well-known African-American scholars, just influential people, and translating their videos and their text into Portuguese to reach a wider Brazilian audience. So I was just citing here that, from the way this person wrote this article, it's almost like they had been studying Frances Cress Welsing. Just some of her work. Of course, most people are familiar with the ISIS papers. I think that book has actually also been translated into Portuguese, if I'm not mistaken. I know that I've participated in several Facebook groups, WhatsApp groups of Black Brazilians who discuss her work, as well as other Black scholars over the years from the United States. So let's get into this piece. If you remember this scene, I can't remember the name of the characters. I know his name. What was it? Caballera? I can't remember his name, but it was translated as Shaggy. I think it was when it came out as City of God in the United States, and they ended up in a little relationship going on here. So the name of today's article is Black Affective Relationships and How They Tend to Be Complex by Emerson Luis. He writes, if there is one thing that is so complex to discuss in its very essence, are the romantic relations of Black people, especially lovers. It is important to highlight several points from which this problem arises, many of them originating in racism and in the social structure that ended up consolidating post-slavery, which apparently equated the Black with the white and rights. But little was directed to social recovery and to the desacralization of the perpetuated image of Blacks, allowing the same relations to occur, but now veiled by an alleged freedom. That said, we understand the structural format with which racism legitimizes itself within Brazilian society, in which an image about the Black still creeps and makes their relationships, to a greater or lesser degree, complex. There are several labels that Blacks usually carry. When it comes to Black women, they are strong warriors. We do not lie down for nothing. If you took the reference to rapper Hiko da Salam, here, you are my idol. With Black men, the logic is the same, since the Black man's image was constructed around a perception of this man as a machine, both in a commercial sense. The Black man is the object man of colonial Brazil with no identity and totally focused on the execution of his work, as much as in a sexual sense, in virility, masculinity, and the little emotional work of the Black man, which he apparently does not need. It makes him an object of fetish and sexual desire linked to endowment. It is from this stereotyping that we also understand as Blacks that we must fulfill this burden, because that is how history has succeeded us. In the blood, a living and pulsating trace of many struggles, a lot of resistance, and a lot of pain. Again, it's as rapper Hiko Dalasam says in one of his songs, his new EP, Balanga Haba. In the solitude of the river flowing from me, I bleed sozinho, or sozinho, meaning alone. I live well this way. I love Hiko, and the fault is not his, but do you realize how much of this lyric is problematic? We bleed alone, and we always did, because we were led to believe that we should. We believe that we must withstand the pressures, the violence, the loneliness, and the absences of self-esteem of our day-to-day, because it is in our blood to be a hero. It is in our blood to survive. On the one hand, this is beautiful because it shows how much our Blackness represents resistance. On the other hand, it intensifies the difficulty in executing strong, effective bonds based on fidelity, good and old friendships, and the outbursts that come with it, and the perception of love. Everything gets very distorted. In this bias, we also understand one of the many primary aspects when we talk about the complexity of Black relationships. The hypersexualization over us is tremendous. Once, reading the content of history on colonial Brazil, I discovered that at that time, a saying was spread that affirmed that a white woman is to marry, a mulatto woman is to fornicate, and a Black woman is for work. The Black woman, in addition to suffering doubly for being within these already marginalized social groups, woman and Black, finds this conflict in their affectivities. They often mature without the certainty of finding a love that really welcomes them, understands them, and mainly encourages them. Because in Brazil, the labeling that occurs around the Black woman is that of sexual object, with the least of empathy, affective or romantic consideration and respect. And due to the social image of the Black man already addressed, logic also confers on this part of the community. So this picture is from a novella. Brazil's top television network is famous for its novellas, soap operas. This is from O Outro Lado do Paraíso, which means the other side of paradise. The actress is Erika Januza, and the actor she's sitting with is Thiago Thomé. So they're presented in a romantic setting here. Intriguing because most of the promos for this particular novella showed her, booed up with a white guy for most of the novella. Anyway, it's just to speak on that, I'm not a big fan of Brazilian novellas, but I've often noticed over the years, it is really hard to find Black couples in these novellas. You always, if you see a Black character on that program, whether man or woman, they usually pair with a white partner, opposite a white actor or actress in the novella. Is it art imitating life? Is it art engineering life? Or is it life imitating art? Who's to say? But this is something that I noticed for years. Like, what's the fear of having a Black couple? And, I come to the realization it's not fear, it's promotion. constantly in the mind is saying, look, whiten your family.